So, a federal judge just handed down a ruling that could end Donald Trump's business empire permanently. We're talking about a lifetime ban from running any company in New York, and this isn't some temporary measure or slap on the wrist. This is a judge saying Trump has proven himself so fundamentally dishonest in business that he can no longer be trusted to operate any enterprise whatsoever. It's honestly hard to believe we're at this point. For decades, Trump built his entire identity around being this brilliant businessman, the guy who could negotiate any deal, who understood money better than anyone. That was the brand. That was what got him elected president. And now a court has officially declared that it was all built on fraud. But here's where this gets really interesting. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha himself, just broke his usual silence on political matters to weigh in on this ruling. And trust me, what he had to say is going to make Trump absolutely lose his mind. This isn't just about one failed business or one bad deal. We're talking about the potential collapse of everything Trump has spent his life building, and the implications reach far beyond just one man's financial empire. Let me fill you in on what's been happening, because this situation has been building for a while now. Donald Trump has been facing a massive civil fraud trial in New York, brought by Attorney General Letitia James. She filed this lawsuit back in September 2022, alleging that Trump and his organization systematically inflated the value of their assets for decades. We're talking about claiming Mar-a-Lago was worth over $700 million when its actual assessed value was closer to $75 million, saying his Trump Tower penthouse was 30,000 square feet when it was really 11,000, valuing properties at 10 times their actual worth to get better loans and insurance rates. According to the New York Times reporting from October 2024, the evidence showed this wasn't just aggressive accounting or optimistic valuation. This was deliberate, systematic fraud spanning years and involving hundreds of millions of dollars in fraudulent statements to banks and insurers. Trump's defense throughout this trial has been consistent. He's called it a political witch hunt, claimed the banks got their money back so there's no victim, and insisted that property valuations are always subjective anyway. His legal team argued that sophisticated banks do their own due diligence and weren't actually deceived by anything Trump's organization provided. But here's where the rubber meets the road. Judge Arthur Engoron, who's been overseeing this case, wasn't buying any of it, not even a little bit. Reports from around October 28, 2024, revealed just how fed up Judge Engoron had become with Trump's behavior throughout this trial. The judge had already issued several sanctions against Trump's legal team for frivolous motions and had repeatedly called out Trump himself for violating gag orders by attacking court staff on social media. Engoron labeled Trump's defenses as utterly without basis in law or fact, and even went as far as to say the evidence of fraud was so overwhelming that he was granting partial summary judgment before the trial even concluded. Talk about strong words. Essentially, Judge Engoron was calling Trump a serial fraudster for not sticking to basic honesty in business dealings. And this wasn't a private conversation. Engoron made sure to lay out his findings publicly in detailed written rulings, making it clear that he was not impressed with Trump's excuses or his courtroom behavior. This announcement sent shockwaves through Trump's legal team and business organization because it raised all sorts of questions. If a judge, after reviewing thousands of documents and hearing weeks of testimony, could determine the fraud was so blatant that it didn't even require a full trial on that issue, what did that mean for everyone else in Trump's orbit, scrambling to distance themselves from potential liability? Now, this isn't the first time we've seen Trump's supposed loyalty to people evaporate the moment they stop being useful to him. Trump's pattern really only extends to himself. Whenever someone stops serving his interests or does something he doesn't like, he's quick to turn on them. We've spotted this pattern time and time again. Just think about how he turned on Jeff Sessions right after Sessions recused himself from the Russia investigation. Sessions had been one of Trump's earliest and most loyal supporters, a senator who stuck his neck out to endorse Trump when it wasn't popular. But the moment Sessions followed basic ethical guidelines and recused himself, Trump spent months publicly humiliating him, calling him weak, eventually forcing him out as Attorney General. Sessions' reward for decades of loyalty was being thrown under the bus and mocked on Twitter daily. Then there was William Barr. Trump wasn't pleased when Barr refused to back Trump's claims about the 2020 election being stolen. Barr had been one of Trump's most effective allies as Attorney General, doing everything he could to protect Trump from Mueller investigation fallout and generally serving Trump's interests. But when Barr looked at the election fraud claims and publicly stated there was no evidence of widespread fraud, Trump turned on him viciously. Suddenly, Barr was weak, disloyal, part of the swamp. And let's not forget how he distanced himself from Mike Pence when Pence refused to overturn the election results on January 6th. Pence had been the most loyal vice president imaginable, defending Trump through every scandal, never breaking ranks publicly even once. His reward? Trump supporters chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," while Trump watched on television and did nothing to protect him. Even Kevin McCarthy faced a similar fate when McCarthy had the audacity to briefly criticize Trump's actions on January 6th. McCarthy later crawled back to Mar-a-Lago to beg forgiveness, but the damage was done. Trump never trusted him again and was reportedly pleased when McCarthy got ousted as Speaker. Now it looks like anyone in Trump's business organization who testified honestly in this trial is in the hot seat. This pattern is becoming all too familiar. You can show all the loyalty in the world and defend Trump every single day, but the moment you step out of line or cease to be useful, he'll toss you aside without a second thought. So, what did Trump do to end up in this impossible position with Judge Engoron? Well, it all boils down to decades of alleged financial fraud finally catching up with him. The impasse happened because the New York Attorney General's office wanted accountability for systematic fraud, while Trump's team were trying to claim everything was just normal business practice and political persecution. Ultimately, the judge ruled against Trump on the core fraud allegations even before the trial concluded, since the evidence was so overwhelming. As the defendant in this case, Trump decided to take a combative stance. He attacked the judge repeatedly on social media, violated gag orders, and refused to show any contrition or acknowledgement of wrongdoing. His approach seemed to be just deny everything, attack everyone, and hope his base's support would somehow translate into legal protection. At first, some legal observers thought this strategy might work with Trump's appointed judges or in jurisdictions where he had political support. He appreciates loyalty and the notion of using political pressure to influence legal outcomes. But here's where things started to go wrong. But as the trial dragged into its second month, some serious issues started cropping up. The evidence kept piling up. Witnesses from Trump's own organization were confirming the fraud, and Judge Engoron was losing patience with the courtroom antics. While Trump's supporters were steadfast and holding their ground in the court of public opinion, predictably, the legal case itself began to shift toward the prosecution. Documents indicated that the financial statements were fraudulent by any reasonable standard, with Trump's own accountants distancing themselves from the numbers. This was the moment legal experts began to sweat a little about Trump's chances. You see, Trump values winning, loyalty, and overall maintaining his image as untouchable. He doesn't want to be tied to a fraud conviction that's going to destroy his business empire and his reputation as a successful businessman. That's definitely not the victory he seeks. And then Trump's legal team went ahead and made a move that, according to many legal experts, was a serious misstep. Trump started looking for ways to delay and figured he should attack the judge personally and violate gag orders to rally his base. His lawyers even considered increasingly frivolous motions to slow down the proceedings. But then, when Judge Engoron caught wind of all this, he absolutely lost it. In Judge Engoron's eyes, attempting to intimidate the court and its staff is just a sign of desperation and guilt. Violating direct court orders, that's pure contempt. Any defendant who dares to repeatedly attack court staff while a trial is ongoing is instantly demonstrating why they can't be trusted. Now, this left Trump in a tight spot. On one side, he really needs to maintain his image with his base as a fighter who never backs down to what he calls the deep state and corrupt judges. The MAGA supporters will drop him like a hot potato if he shows any weakness or admission of wrongdoing. On the flip side, he actually has to deal with the legal reality that a judge has the power to impose devastating sanctions, and antagonizing that judge makes those sanctions more likely and more severe. The tricky part is all of that requires some level of contrition and respect for the legal process, which Trump absolutely hates showing. So Trump is caught in a bind. He can either keep playing to his base, which means continuing to attack the judge, which only makes the legal situation worse and guarantees the harshest possible penalties. Or he can show some respect for the court as a defendant should, which means toning down the attacks, which his base might see as weakness, but that'll definitely help reduce the severity of sanctions. It's a tough situation, and that's the mess Trump creates for himself. He demands complete loyalty from supporters and wants them to believe he's being persecuted without any valid reason, but then he points fingers at everyone else when the legal consequences come. He's not shy about playing the victim card whenever it suits him. This whole scenario is causing major stress within Trump's business organization and political circle. If Trump has been found liable for fraud and is facing a potential lifetime business ban, every employee, every executive, every business partner is left wondering if they're the next target for investigation or if they'll be left holding the bag. Those Trump Organization executives who are trying to balance keeping their jobs with staying out of legal jeopardy are now worried sick about being the next one to face charges or civil suits. Meanwhile, the MAGA hardliners believe Trump isn't fighting hard enough and that he's too willing to let the legal system push him around instead of defying it completely. Things became even more intense when Alan Weisselberg, one of Trump's longest-serving and most trusted financial officers, ended up pleading guilty to tax fraud charges. Weisselberg had been pushing for Trump to fight every charge, but he ultimately took a plea deal himself. When someone is aligned with Trump's interests as Weisselberg starts cooperating, or at least acknowledging wrongdoing, you know the legal situation is dire. According to Politico's reporting from October 29, 2024, the Attorney General's office decided to push for the maximum penalties available under the law. On that date, they formally requested that Judge Engoron impose a permanent ban on Trump operating any business in New York State and order disgorgement of approximately $370 million in what they termed ill-gotten gains from the fraudulent practices. Letitia James pointed out that the evidence showed Trump's fraud wasn't a one-time mistake, but a core business practice spanning decades. Her legal team argued that allowing Trump to continue in business after such systematic fraud would send a message that wealthy, powerful individuals can defraud banks and insurers with impunity as long as they claim the sophisticated institutions should have caught it. The legal process moved pretty quickly once the trial evidence phase concluded and the judge recognized the urgency. After all, every day Trump continues operating businesses built on fraudulent foundations means potential ongoing harm to the financial system and to anyone doing business with Trump entities. And let me tell you, the judge didn't hold back with the ruling. It was a major blow for Trump. The judge declared that Trump's actions were a clear violation of New York business law and that his conduct demonstrated a complete lack of contrition or reformation. That's legal speak for saying, you've got no solid ground to stand on here. There's no legal validity to what you're claiming. You committed fraud, you got caught, and you're showing no signs you'd behave any differently in the future. Judge Engoron, calling out Trump by name and detailing the specific fraudulent acts, created a real stir. It's a significant move, reminding Trump that he isn't above the law regardless of his political power or wealth. This is a huge deal that doesn't usually happen with defendants of Trump's stature in functioning democracies. Legal experts are noting that we haven't seen a business ban of this magnitude imposed on a former president in American history. Andrew McCarthy, a former federal prosecutor and conservative legal commentator, went on Fox News and made a statement that really should catch everyone's attention. He said that given the evidence presented and the judge's findings, Trump's legal team faces a nearly impossible task on appeal because the factual record is so thoroughly documented. Just think about that for a moment. This is coming from someone who's generally sympathetic to Republican causes and skeptical of what he views as politically motivated prosecutions. And this is coming from a conservative voice on Fox News. Jonathan Turley, a constitutional law professor at George Washington University, mentioned that the scope of the fraud findings and the detailed factual record Judge Engoron compiled will make appellate review very difficult for Trump. When legal experts from both sides of the political spectrum start tossing around terms like nearly impossible to overturn on appeal and thoroughly documented fraud, that's the moment to really pay attention. So let's break down what this ruling could mean, because it's not just a captivating legal story. It has serious consequences for how our business regulatory system operates and for Trump's political future. First up is the immediate political fallout. Trump is already facing significant backlash due to his multiple criminal indictments, and his approval ratings among independent voters are taking a hit. Republican representatives are getting anxious about the 2024 election, which is definitely adding to the tension. Now, Trump can be labeled a judicially confirmed fraudster, someone a judge determined ran his business empire on systematic lies. And honestly, that's not the best look for him. Most folks in America have a good deal of respect for successful business people as vital contributors to the economy, even if they don't always agree with their politics. But fraud, that's different. That crosses a line. Democrats are definitely planning to take advantage of this situation. They'll argue that Trump believes he's above the law and does not hold basic business ethics in high regard, and they'll have Judge Engoron's detailed findings backing up those claims. This is going to be Exhibit A in proving that Trump is fundamentally dishonest and unfit for office. You can expect to see this ruling popping up in Democratic campaign ads, speeches, and debates for the entire 2024 cycle and beyond. Now let's touch on what this means for New York's business community and regulatory system itself. New York Attorney General Letitia James has been working hard to keep business regulation enforcement credible, wanting it to be viewed as applying equally to everyone regardless of political power. But by taking on Trump so aggressively, she's waded right into a political controversy. Trump and his supporters are now poised to attack James, implying political bias and questioning her motives, which complicates things for the Attorney General's image as a neutral enforcer of law. Yet James probably felt she had no other choice. If she stayed silent while evidence of systematic fraud sat in her office, the business regulatory system's credibility would take an even bigger hit. This situation shines a massive spotlight on whether our legal system can actually hold the powerful accountable. At the heart of the issue is whether someone with Trump's wealth and political power can just commit fraud for decades, whenever he feels like it, without real consequences. If he gets away with it through appeals or political pressure, it could totally change how business law operates. The business regulatory system in New York was designed specifically to prevent exactly this kind of systematic fraud. You're supposed to provide accurate financial information to banks and insurers. That's not a suggestion. That's the foundation of how our entire financial system works. Banks need accurate information to price risk. Insurers need accurate information to set premiums. When someone systematically lies on those documents, they're not just hurting one bank or one insurance company. They're undermining the integrity of the entire system. But Trump has always been uncomfortable with those limitations. He craves total control and the ability to bend rules to his advantage. If this lifetime business ban gets overturned on appeal or doesn't actually get enforced, that's a significant boost to wealthy defendants' ability to escape accountability, and it opens the door for future business leaders to engage in similar fraud thinking they can get away with it too. So, the implications of this case reach far beyond just Trump and the New York Attorney General's office. It's about shaping the structure of business accountability and regulatory enforcement for many years to come. Each time Trump brushes aside norms, breaks laws, or attacks institutions designed to maintain integrity, it weakens our democratic and economic systems. It starts making behavior that used to be completely unacceptable feel normal. Think about it. If Trump can commit systematic fraud for decades and ultimately escape real consequences through appeals or political maneuvering, what's to stop the next wealthy businessman from doing the same? If he can just lie on financial documents whenever he wants and face no meaningful penalty, what's to prevent another developer or CEO from following that lead? These actions don't just disappear when Trump leaves the scene. They become part of our new business culture, and that's pretty dangerous. A functioning economy relies on those norms and honest financial reporting, assuming that people in business will play by basic rules, even when it's a bit inconvenient or limits their profits. When those norms crumble, the entire financial system's integrity starts to falter. Looking ahead to the 2024 election, it's clear that all of this is going to have some significant effects. We're still several months out from that election, but the narrative being set now is bound to influence how things go. If the story playing out is one of Trump battling every institution from the courts to business regulators and coming out on the losing side with findings of fraud, that spells trouble for his campaign. Voters usually don't reward candidates labeled as fraudsters by judges. They want integrity and trustworthiness in their leaders, especially when it comes to economic stewardship. Right now, Trump isn't offering either of those, so expect Democrats to champion a message focused on restoring honesty and accountability to government. After years of chaos and now judicial findings of fraud under Trump, there are folks who believe that if you vote for Biden or another Democrat, business regulation will actually work properly again. They're promising no more constant legal crises or defendants attacking judges from the campaign trail, just good old normal governance where people actually follow the law. That message might just hit home for a lot of voters, including some moderate Republicans and independents who are exhausted by the constant drama. Now here's where things get really interesting, and this is why Warren Buffett's response matters so much. Buffett has spent decades building a reputation as not just a brilliant investor, but as someone who values integrity and honest dealing above everything else. His annual letters to shareholders are famous for emphasizing ethical business practices and transparency. According to MSNBC's report from November 1, 2024, Buffett was asked about the Trump ruling during Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting. His response was measured but devastating. Buffett said that systematic fraud in financial reporting is the worst possible sin in business, because it destroys the trust that makes markets function. He noted that when someone lies about asset values to get better loan terms, they're not being a clever businessman. They're being a thief who's stealing from everyone who relies on honest markets. Coming from someone of Buffett's stature, someone who's built an empire on the foundation of honest dealing and long-term thinking, that statement carries enormous weight. Buffett didn't mention Trump by name in his initial comments, but everyone knew exactly what ruling he was referencing. When reporters pressed him directly about whether a lifetime business ban was appropriate for someone found to have committed systematic fraud over decades, Buffett's response was even more pointed. He said that if the facts are as Judge Engoron found them to be, then yes, someone who has proven themselves fundamentally dishonest in business dealings has forfeited the right to operate in markets that depend on trust. The stakes have never been higher, the evidence stronger, and the outcome more unpredictable. Trump will appeal this ruling, absolutely. His lawyers are already preparing the paperwork. But the appellate courts will be reviewing a remarkably thorough factual record compiled by Judge Engoron, and overturning findings of fact is notoriously difficult. Meanwhile, Trump's business empire hangs in the balance. His political campaign now has to defend against judicial findings of fraud, and the broader question of whether our system can actually hold the powerful accountable is being tested in real time. The next few weeks are going to be crucial as Trump's legal team files their appeals, and as the political ramifications of being labeled a fraud by a judge start to sink in with voters. We're just getting started. This legal battle will likely stretch into the 2024 election season, and every development will be scrutinized by both Trump's supporters looking for vindication and his opponents looking for confirmation that the system still works. This ride is far from over.